So please excuse my dog. He decided that he wanted to see what was going on, so he came into the craft room and had a little nose about, but he soon got bored and walked away. So that's it, we won't see him again. So I've just took a black sock and I've put it inside of a glass, and I'm filling that up with toy stuffing. Then I'm taking a clear elastic band and I'm just going to use that to close off the top of this sock. And this is really similar to my day one from my 2015 Christmas series, so if you haven't seen that video, I will have a link to that at the end of this one. But it's really similar, only there we were making a snowman, whereas this is going to be a penguin. So I'm just sectioning off the top third of the sock now with another elastic, and that will create the space for the penguin's head. So I'm really excited to share this video with you. One of the reasons is because of the reaction to my snowman video. So the snowman video was my most popular video from last year. So I thought, you know, the snowman's really cute, but he needs some buddies, so I figured I'd make a penguin. So I'm just using, I think this is actually some Sticks to roll of adhesive dots. I'm just using something circular to draw out two circles, one slightly bigger and one slightly smaller, and this is just on some white felt that I'm cutting out with my Fiskars scissors. So I'll make sure that I've got all of the products that I'm using linked in the description below. I do try to do that with all of my videos, so if you're ever curious about what I've used or you're wondering where you can get that from, I'll usually have it linked below to a shop. I do use affiliate links where possible, which means you still pay the same amount, but I get a small amount of commission, which helps me fund my YouTube channel. So I'm just taking some Tombow Mono Multi glue and using that to attach the white stomach and the white face. So you'll see that I originally did these almost like a figure eight together, but they weren't actually quite big enough, so I cut them apart so I could have those separate, and it doesn't matter because that middle section is going to be covered up with a scarf anyway. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut off the top of that black sock, and I'm just bringing in another sock, this time a stripy one, and I'm just rolling up the sort of like the cuff around the ankle to make what will be the edge of the hat. And I just think it looks really cute to add that extra little detail when you're making the hat, just to roll that part up so it looks like the trim on a bobble hat. So once I've played around with that and got that into place, I'm just going to measure out how high up the sock I want to place the bobble, and then I'll tie that off nice and tight again, and then I'll just trim off the excess with my scissors. So for this particular penguin, I'm using, it's actually one of my old socks, so if I'd have used a men's sock, then I probably wouldn't have had to have made the next step quite so complicated, because the sock would have been long enough to make the scarf out of one piece of material, which is what I did with the snowman last year. But because this sock's a little bit smaller, I did have to make the scarf out of two separate pieces, but that's okay, I'll show you how to do that. And what I'm just doing there is just trimming those leftovers so I get a nice little bobble effect at the top of the hat. So I'm going to go ahead and trim down this sock into two separate pieces. I cut along this edge here, and then once I got to the end I just cut off the toe section because it doesn't look as nice, and when you stretch that fabric and pull it, all of the cut edges will roll in on themselves, so you end up with a nice clean finished edge. Okay, so I'm going to take one of those pieces now, and I tied a knot in this piece because I originally thought that I was just going to place that knot down. You'll see in a minute that I changed my mind and I do it slightly differently, but I kept that in just so you could see my thought process. So I'm wrapping around one of those pieces of sock, and I'm just wrapping that round and then tucking in the edges to hold that in place. I will go back and add a little bit of glue, but as you can see, for the time being I've just tucked those edges in to hold that in place, and that makes sort of the first part of that scarf for the penguin. And then I could have just glued this knotted piece on top, but I decided I didn't like the way it looked, so I undid the knot, and I'm going to place that underneath the section that's already on the penguin. And then again, I could have just placed a dot of glue and left it like this, and I think that's really cute, and I did consider leaving it like that, but then I decided to tie almost like a tie knot by wrapping that around and then pulling it back through and then just straightening that out, and I think that gives the most realistic sort of scarf shape or scarf knot. So I was pleased with how that turned out. And then again, the same as what I did with the hat, I'm just going to take my scissors and cut a couple of slits upwards into each of those scarf ends to give them almost a frayed look. So once I've finished with the second side of the scarf, I just need to add some details for the face and the beak. So I considered using buttons for this, but then I decided to cut out a triangle from some yellow felt. I really liked that as the penguin's beak, and I also decided to use some googly eyes for the penguin's eyes. So again, I'm going to glue those down using the same glue, the Tombow Mono Multi Glue, and just press each of those in place. So when I glued down the eyes, I just took a minute to make sure that they were glued down nice and straight and I didn't have a cross-eyed penguin. Once I had those in place, I just added some glue to the top of the beak so it could sit slightly away from the penguin's face, just to add a little bit of dimension, and I really liked the way the beak looked sat on top of the scarf.